Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala Rasulillah. So far we have done the first four verses of Surah al-Fatihah. And last week we entered into the verse that begins a conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we said that this is the nature of the Qur'an, that the Qur'an is not just us reciting the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, rather it is us having a conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So here we see, in this verse we saw, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. You alone we worship, and you alone we seek help. And the surah continues. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. So look at, we said in the beginning when we talked about the basmala, we said Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us. The first word in the Qur'an is, or the first structure in the Qur'an is to do with the names of Allah, not Allah's name itself. And in doing so, it seems as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us the importance of His names before we even get into the Qur'an, before we even hear Allah's name. That Allah's names are of significant importance to the person who is reading the Qur'an or being ready to receive guidance. That we need to know who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. And then, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen Ar-Rahmanir Rahim Maliki Yawmiddin, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts describing Himself to the person who has opened up the Qur'an and read the first page. And with His most important titles, right? Rabbul Alameen, Allah, then Rabbul Alameen, then Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim, then Maliki Yawmiddin, and then the mention of Yawmiddin as well, that there is an end to all of this, that we are going to be resurrected. And then إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. Again, this tarbiyah aspect in the Qur'an, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making us say that you alone we worship, you alone we seek help from. As if now we know who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, and now we orient ourselves towards Him, and we worship Him alone, and we seek help from Him alone. Then the tarbiyah continues, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then shows us what it is when He said, إِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ, you alone we seek help from. What is the primary help we should be seeking from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. We should be asking Him for Hidayah, for guidance. This is the main help we should be seeking from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Seeking His guidance is the help we should be seeking primarily from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anything else after that, it's not mentioned yet. Right? It's not mentioned yet. It might be implied somewhere, but it's as if the verse is leading us towards this notion that what we're actually seeking help for is Hidayah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. What is Hidayah? Hidayah we translate as guidance. But the sort of lexical meaning of Hidayah is to guide with lutf, with gentleness. This is the meaning of Hidayah, to guide with gentleness. And this is why the word Hidayah is used for something that is guidance that is good. Whereas a more neutral term is dalala. Right? Dalala is a more neutral term, which is guidance as well. But it's not used in the same way as Hidayah, because Hidayah has this added element of gentleness in it. So subhanAllah, if we want to be guided, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses gentleness with us. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to be guided, He uses gentleness with us. And if Allah, even in times of hardship, right, the sort of blessings we receive after the time of hardship when it's lifted, that's still a generosity from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Similarly, when we guide others to Islam, we should also do it in a similar way, that we guide others to Islam with gentleness, with wisdom, instead of brashness and coarseness. And that is, of course, as the Prophet ﷺ was the walking Qur'an that reflects in his akhlaq ﷺ that he had as well. As for the types of guidance that Allah, the types of hidayah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us, then there is no end. There is no end to the hidayah, the guidance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us. There is no end to the different types of it. But if we wanted to try and put them into categories, we could find 4 different categories for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's hidayah. The first type of hidayah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us is actually already in us. And it is the capability to think, to reflect, and to use our minds and our hearts and to reflect over creation, to think about the blessings that we have been given, to read the Qur'an, to recognize guidance. This is the first blessing, this is the first, guidance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, the first hidayah. It's already built into us. It's already part of who we are. Our fitrah, our soul, our hearts already contain a form of guidance. And we must ask ourselves, are we using that or not? And if we use that, then we are going to be guided. There's no being guided, as we're going to come to a different type of guidance, is the revelation itself. But if I'm not willing to use my aql, I'm not willing to use my heart to reflect and my aql to think, then how can I take advantage of that other type of guidance itself? So some of that guidance, some of that hidayah is already in us. We were created with it. Another type of guidance, another type of hidayah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us is the guidance we see in terms of the world. Nature, for example, or reflecting over creation and coming to this conclusion that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala must exist. There must be a creator out there. Even if I don't know who this creator is yet, but I recognize there is a creator out there. Just from being able to reflect over my surroundings, right? Specifically the creation itself. It's not the ability to think, it's the actual, what I'm applying my thinking to. Number 3, the third type of hidayah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us is, of course, the messengers, alayhimus salam, and the revelations as well. And this is another form of guidance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, another form of hidayah. Lastly, the last form of hidayah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives human beings is that of ilham, of spiritual knowledge that is gained either in wakefulness or in sleep, in the way of true dreams. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives this to human beings, this is a sort of spiritual or a different type of guidance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives, that is not intellect, it's not sensory information, it's not even the heart reflecting, rather it's knowledge coming straight from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala into the hearts of the believers. So when we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for guidance, we could be asking for any one of these. We could be asking for, and even when we know it or not, one of these things might be lacking. Maybe our intellect or our hearts are lacking. Maybe our ability to see hidayah in nature or in creation is lacking. Maybe our ability to understand revelation and the prophets alayhimus salam is lacking. Or maybe we need some sort of guidance in some sort of sign from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in wakefulness or in sleep that demonstrates to us His existence and His truth and His guidance as well. So ihdinas Sirat al-Mustaqim, guide us, but specifically in this context to as-Sirat al-Mustaqim. As-Sirat al-Mustaqim. What is Sirat? Now, first of all, there are 3 ways this verse is recited in the 10 qira'at. One is with the sin, Sirat. The other is with a Sad, Sirat. And lastly, there is a qira'ah with the Sad, but with the ishmam of Zay. And I'm not someone who does qira'at, so I'm probably going to mess it up. But Zirat, for example, this is in one qira'ah as well. But one riwayah, one qira'ah, sorry. And these are three different ways to recite the word. But the original form of the word in the Arabic language is sirat, with a sin. And that essentially comes from the word sarata, which is to swallow something, right? And what this refers to is the fact that it goes down, right? The esophagus. The food goes down the esophagus. So similarly, the sirat is sort of like the path, right? That we go down, or if we carry that analogy of food along, it's almost as if this is the path we inevitably go towards, whether this is Sirat al-Mustaqim or a different Sirat. Allahu Alam. And as for al-Mustaqim, this refers to something, so the path, right, as we usually translate it, the straight path. Rather, so straight path maybe more the meaning of this is the correct path. Okay, we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be guided to the correct path, to be guided to the truth. Because the meaning of mustaqim is that one that is, it's not going the wrong way. Okay, it's going the way it's supposed to go. It's going the way that is going towards the truth. So we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be guided to the truth, the true path. Because there are so many paths out there. And, you know, the whole point of asking for Hidayah is to be able to decipher which of the paths are the ones we should follow and which of them should we not. And then, of course, many people make that kind of dua, whether they accept it or not, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will answer the dua. He will show them the path, but whether they accept it or not is a different story. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Sirat al-ladhina an'amta alayhim ghayr al-maghdubi alayhim wala dallin. The word sirat is repeated. This is in Nahu, we call this badal kul min kul. Why is the word sirat repeated? Because of, for emphasis, right? Guide us to the correct path. What is the correct path? We bring back the word to bring it back into the consciousness that there is a path out there, that we're asked, the path that we're asking to be guided to, that path does exist. Sirat al-ladhina an'amta alayhim. The path of those who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed. An'amta, that we're asking Allah, the path of those you have blessed, not those who have earned your anger, not those who have gone astray. The key here, before we get into the rest of the verse, Sirat al-ladhina an'amta alayhim. The path of those who, people. Right? There's multiple views here who these people are. Either the path of the prophets, or the path of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companions, or there's another view which says the path of Musa and Isa alayhimus salam and their followers as well. Whatever the meaning, right? All those who are on the right path, essentially, that's what we're asking for guidance towards. But here, look at the emphasis on people. Sirat al-ladhina an'amta alayhim. So if someone is looking for guidance, they should be looking for the people of guidance, right? And this is not just when it comes to Islam, but even when trying to understand Islam better, trying to learn Islam better, there are people we should be looking for. And unfortunately, these devices, and we're surrounded by books and devices and all this, the first thing we tend to think of is, if I'm looking for the truth, I'm going to go for a search engine. I'm going to look on social media. Or now even worse, I'm going to look on AI. But the truth in the Sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the books, the revelations were always sent with human beings. And that is a Sunnah of Allah that will not change no matter how advanced AI becomes. And this, we can already see this, right? There's these AI apps, for example, like Elon Musk, this shaitan has been transforming Grok to the point where now it spouts absolute nonsense. The truth will always remain with human beings, and we will always find the truth with human beings of a specific characteristic or a specific sort of belief system. Right? We will their goodness will show through in their beliefs and in their akhlaq. So when we ask for guidance on the path of a specific group of people, which in this case are the prophets or the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba, or Musa and Isa alayhim salam and their followers. So very important to see this little subtle point right here. As for the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so we talked about different types of guidance, different types of blessings. I'm not going to go too much into this. Let's go through this quickly. That there are two types of blessings in life. Two types of ni'mah, right? Blessings. The first type are those that are worldly blessings. And the second type are those that are blessings of the afterlife. Worldly blessings are also of two types. Okay? Worldly blessings are, first of all, those that we did not earn, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us when we were born, for example. The personality, the aql we were given, the biological faculties we've been given, the family we were born into, certain things we had no control over. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us that blessing when He created us. Now these sort of blessings that we were born into, that were given to us naturally by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we already have, we didn't earn these can also be divided into those of the soul, right? For example, some souls have more intellect than others. Some souls are more contemplative than others. So this is a sub-blessing within a sub-blessing, right? That within those blessings in the dunya that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us are those that are natural, that are part of us, that have already been given to us. We didn't earn these. And part of those are blessings of the soul. And the other part of those are blessings in our physical selves, right? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us physically in a certain way, biologically, that we have certain strengths, or we have certain weaknesses, or that we have certain strengths, right? And we have been born either as males or females. Some of us born with certain physical characteristics and not others, right? These are all blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, and we have to learn to appreciate these as much as we can, instead of always comparing ourselves to others. That's the first category of worldly blessings. The other category of worldly blessings are those which we earn, those which we have to acquire. And again, these are divided into those that are worldly and those that are spiritual. Okay, so the spiritual ones, for example, that some people just are given the tawfiq, given the ability by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to work harder to do more ibadah, to exert themselves more, to do more actions, to have purer hearts, right? And they work towards it. It's not just that they're given that, it's that they work towards it too, right? They just put in more effort. And in the worldly sense too, right? Some people put in more effort into, for example, or they're able to pour in more effort, or they just put in more effort into their physical selves, whether, physically making themselves more healthy or beautifying themselves, etc., etc. So these are all worldly blessings, right? These are all worldly blessings that the Prophets ﷺ had too. When we ask for that Sirat, we are also asking for these worldly blessings. Sirat al-ladina an'amta alayhim, the path of those whom you have blessed in their ability, in the natural sort of features they were given. We want that same ability to be guided, or same, propensity to be guided that they had. And or we also want to be able to exert ourselves like they did as well. And of course, ukhrawi, those blessings that are of the hereafter, right? The entrance into Jannah, success in this life by escaping the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and earning the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, more importantly. This is of course something we seek as well, right? And when we ask for this path, the path of those who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed. Excuse me. And which of them is intended here? More likely the last category, which is that we are asking specifically for the blessings in the hereafter that these prophets have been given. But you could put in some of those others into here as well. that we mentioned before that, the worldly blessings. غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. What is the غير here is an adjective, a sifa for عليهم, for the pronoun there. This is a characteristics of those. This is a characteristic of those that, or sorry, from either from that pronoun or الذين. Either way, this is a characteristic. غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. This is an adjective describing these people who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed. Not only has He blessed them, but they are not those who have earned Allah's anger, and they are not those who are misguided. Who are these people who have earned Allah's anger? What kind of person earns Allah's anger? And what kind of person is misguided? There are different ways to understand this part of the surah. Al-Maghdubi alayhim could, first of all, there's one view that says that Al-Maghdubi alayhim are the Jews, right? In that they rebelled actively against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as was going to be a major theme in Surah al-Baqarah. They rebelled against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala repeatedly. It's not just that they were misguided. They knew the truth and they kept fighting it. And they kept fighting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. As for al-Dallin, these are the Nasara, the Christians, that they had guidance at some point, and they're not fighting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're not rebelling against Allah, but they genuinely are lost. Right? They think they're following the truth, but they're actually not. So this is one view. Allahu alam. Another view mentioned by scholars of tafsir is that those who earn Allah's anger are those who fall short or deliberately fall short in their actions. Those who commit sins, essentially. Those who commit sins, they violate Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sharia. They violate Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's code of ethics and laws that He has sent down to His prophets since the beginning. These are the maghdub alayhim. They have earned Allah's anger because they have violated they've disobeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As for waladallin, the dallin, who are the dallin? Who are the dallun? These misguided people. These are the people who are misguided because they're not using their aql. They're not using their intellect. They're not reflecting over Allah's signs. When they come to revelation, they're not reflecting over revelation. They're not applying it to themselves. They pass by revelation and they don't think about it. Their aql doesn't integrate with the meanings of the Qur'an. So this would, if this is the second tafsir, would not just include disbelievers, but even amongst believers, right? The dua, اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين, could either be referring to making a dua for guidance in the context of believers in comparison to disbelievers, right? That we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide to the path of Islam. Or even within Islam, we want to be guided to the path of the prophets, the best of believers, and not just the believers who commit sins, who are misguided in that they don't use their intellect to understand Islam properly, and they don't learn it with the ulama, for example. That even amongst them, we want to be guided not just to any path within Islam, the path of fulan or fulan, but to the path of the prophets alayhimussalam themselves. Right? And of course, I can easily bring in here al-ulama warathatul anbiya, that if it is the path of the prophets that I seek, Sirat alladhina an'amta alayhim, then the scholars are the inheritors of the prophets. That path is found with the ulama. No. Wallahu alam. As for the word Amin, this is not, as we mentioned in a previous week, the word Amin is not part of the surah. Right? The word Amin is not a part of the surah. And the meaning of Amin, okay, this is a very specific type of word in Arabic called an ism fi'l. Okay, it usually doesn't show up until later grammar books, so I don't want to get too much into that. But the meaning of it is istajib. Oh Allah, answer. Right? So when we say Amin, we can say Amin to our own du'as as well. Right? We're saying what it basically means, oh Allah, answer my du'a. That's what it means. And like we said, this is not from the Qur'an. There is no disagreement about this. There is disagreement about Surah al-Fatihah, about Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Is that from Surah al-Fatihah or not? As for Amin, there is no ikhtilaf on that whatsoever. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, Jibreel alayhi salam Jibreel taught me Amin when I stopped reading Surah al-Fatihah, and said, this is like the seal upon the book. No. Now, moving on to Surah al-Baqarah. The next surah starts. Now this Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim is not part of the surah. Okay? All the other surahs, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, actually for Shafis they are, but we're not going to go with that right now. For Shafis, yes, all these other Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, they're part of the surah as well. But for the rest of the Qur'an, okay, for the most part, it is not the case. Allahu Alam. The surah starts off with Allif Lam Mim. ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين. Now, this is just what I recited so far. Allif Lam Mim ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين. Until here, this is actually 4 sentences in the Arabic language. Okay, it looks very small, right? It looks like just one, it looks like just one verse. But it's actually, 2 verses. Alif Lam Mim is a verse by itself, and then the second verse, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. But this is actually 4 sentences, grammatically. Okay, and there's a lot just in here. Okay, we're going to spend quite a bit of time in this first section here, just to show these very intricate features of the Qur'an, and as we go along, we will get more into the thematic aspects and bring up these sort of syntactical points now and then. Alif Lam Mim. Why does the surah begin with Alif Lam Mim, first of all? What's the function of Alif Lam Mim? Alif Lam Mim, this would have immediately, for the Arab opening the Qur'an for the first time, back in the days of the Prophet ﷺ, or encountering the surah for the first time, immediately this would have stopped them in their tracks, because they have never heard anything like this before. And immediately it would have opened up this issue. So the Qur'an challenges the Arabs to bring a surah, فَأْتُوا بِسُورَةٍ مِّن مِثْلِهِ, right? Bring a surah like this, right? Or bring a surah similar to this from the Prophet ﷺ, from himself. There's 2 tafasir on that. Right away, the Arab would have been stupefied in being unable to bring forth even just Alif Lam Mim. And this is something we've already talked about a little bit, but we're going to come across from time to time. It's called I'jazul Qur'an. The features of the Qur'an that make it miraculous and unable to replicate. So right away, the Arab who first, the original Arabs, they would have encountered this, and they would have been, dumbfounded. How am I going to replicate this Qur'an? I don't even know what this is. This is the first time I'm hearing this. Right? What did this mean? As we're going to get to the meanings of this, right? It still, for example, has aesthetic quality. It still sounds nice. Is it an anagram? Does it stand for something? Right? There's immediately this sort of flash right away of what is this about? Right? There is something mysterious about this verse, and that's why immediately it starts with Alif Lam Mim. For the person reading the Qur'an, as soon as they finish Surah al-Fatihah, they've gotten the introduction to what the Qur'an is, or who it's from, and what the relationship with the creator is supposed to be. Now they're getting into the actual book. The muqaddimah is done. And suddenly it comes right away with the first verse, which is Alif Lam Mim. Now, for the Arabs, I specifically said, for the Arabs back then, right, this would have been something miraculous for them. A feature of the Qur'an that is irreplicable for them. It may not seem like that to someone today. especially someone living today who's, their parents studied tafsir, you've been exposed to some tafsir, for example, you maybe, you know a bit of Arabic and whatever not, and, you're almost like you're desensitized, right, to the miraculousness of this, even if it still is a miraculous aspect of the Qur'an or irreplicable aspect of the Qur'an, you're still desensitized to it. But when it comes to i'jaz al-Qur'an, the miracles of the Qur'an that make it irreplicable, the Qur'an has different types of i'jaz for everyone, of all different levels, of all different kinds of people, to the point where the scholar of Arabic will find i'jaz, will find irreplicable features in the Qur'an. The farmer tending his fields will find irreplicable aspects in the Qur'an. The scientists working in their lab, biology, chemistry, physics, will find i'jaz in the Qur'an. The economists, the financial expert, whatever, will find i'jaz in the Qur'an. No matter who the person is, an engineer, any mathematician, will find i'jaz in the Qur'an. Someone who's just working, in a factory, or working, some other sort of job, even driving a taxi, they will find i'jaz in the Qur'an. So, just because, we encounter this, Allif Lam Mim, one instance of the irreplicability of the Qur'an, a feature of the Qur'an, doesn't click with us, doesn't mean there's something in it for everyone, right? There's wisdom, there's guidance, there is i'jaz, evidence of irreplicability for anyone who comes to the Qur'an. Now, so Alif Lam Mim, what does it mean? Now, there have been tons of views on this over Islamic history. Okay, we're not going to go through every single one. We'll be here forever. Let's just condense some of the more popular ones, some of the more well-known ones. One view is that these are actually names of the surahs. Okay, so another name for Surah al-Baqarah then would be Alif Lam Mim. Possibly. Allahu Alam. Okay, so this is one possible view, that these are names of the surahs. Okay, so there will be a number of surahs which start with Alif Lam Mim, just like Hamim, there are several, right? So each one has that name based on those initial letters in it. Another view is that these are, I think the word is anagrams, right? That each letter stands for something. And again, many different views as to what exactly they are. For example, one view is that the Alif refers to Allah, the Lam refers to Jibreel, and the Mim refers to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in that the Qur'an was revealed from Allah by the way of Jibreel to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? This is another view. Another view is that these are names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not names of the surahs, but names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another view is let's skip that one. Another view is that, of course, the more well-known one, that we don't know, right? And it's actually meant to make us realize how little we know about the Qur'an, and how much there is to reflect over the Qur'an, how the Qur'an is a bottomless well that we can keep pulling from, we can keep drawing benefit from, because its meanings, the possible meanings of it, are so endless. It's almost as if it's a reminder of that before we start the book, that every single ayah, just one ayah, Alif Lam Mim, that every single ayah in the Qur'an has meanings that you can plumb the depths of forever. Allah knows best. And the same thing with whatever we've said so far, the same thing would apply for all the other similar sort of letter beginnings in the Quran, right? Alif Lam Mim, Sad, Kaf, Ha, Ya, Ain, Sad. Okay, all these different combinations, this would apply to them as well. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. If the translation, right? That is the book in which there is no doubt. A guidance for the people of taqwa. why does it say ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابِ? That is the book. Isn't the book in front of me? Isn't it this book? So, again, many different views here as to what exactly this means. One is possible to say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is referring here to the origin of the book, in that it comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So referring to it as something almost as if it's far away, to show its origin point, or to show the status of the book. ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابِ, right? It's as if it's far away, something high and lofty. ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. Now, there are a number of views, and hopefully I don't confuse anyone by getting into this. What is the word ذَلِكَ referring to? That. That is the book. Right? Is it referring to the book, the Qur'an itself? Or is it referring even to, it could be referring to Allif Lam Mim. That is the book. The Allif Lam Mim, it's, if we said it's an anagram, right? From Allah to Jibreel alayhi salam to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that it's referring actually to Allif Lam Mim. Or if it's a name of a surah. If it's the name of the surah, then again, if it's talking about the name of the surah, it's as if referring to the Qur'an itself. All these different views. Okay, all these different views. Alif Lam Mim, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابِ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. There is no, depending on the translation, there is no doubt in it. In the sense that the book is so clear to a certain extent, right? We talked about Alif Lam Mim being obscure, but many of the meanings of the Qur'an are what we call muhkam. In the Qur'an, there's many different ways to divide up the verses of the Qur'an and categorize them. One of the ways to categorize the verses of the Qur'an, there are some verses that are muhkam and some verses that are mutashabih. And what that means is some verses are decisive in their meaning. They're muhkam. You read them, meaning is clear. And there are some verses in the Qur'an which are mutashabih. That there's not confusion, but tashabuh. Like, it could mean this or it could mean that. We're not sure. The meaning is not decisive. The mutashabih verses are understood with the muhkam verses. So the verses that are decisive, that are clear, we use those to understand the verses that are more ambiguous or unclear. They're mutashabih. And of course, there'll be ikhtilafat, right, in understanding the mutashabih verses with the muhkam verses. So, in a way, the Qur'an is clear. The muhkam verses at least. Right? The muhkam verses are clear. La rayba fi. In the sense that the Qur'an is so clear in its muhkam verses that every person of intellect understands what it's saying. If they're thinking properly. Right? If they're thinking properly and also they're honest with themselves, it's not that they understand it and they shut off their mind, like, no, okay, it doesn't make sense to me. No, they understood it, but they walked away from it. That's the recurring theme in the Qur'an. Qur'an will get to. The source of kufr is not, in the Qur'an, so many times it's mentioned, the source of kufr is not ignorance. And it's not that people don't understand Islam. It's that they actually understand it, but they refuse to accept it for various reasons. So, la rayba fihi, for the person of intellect, there is no doubt in this Qur'an what its meaning is. And one thing I want to add here, the verse is structured in a way to show that there is no doubt in the Qur'an. Because la rayba fihi, this is a very strong form of negation in Arabic. La rayba. There's a fatha on top. Okay. This is a very strong form of negation in the Arabic language. And this is done because you could see it, you could say instead la fihi rayb. But instead you say la rayba fihi. And the change in meaning in Arabic grammar is quite significant. Right? All these things I'm going to show in the beginning to show how every single part of the Qur'an is worded in a very, very specific way for a very, very specific purpose. Then, la rayba fihi. Every person of intellect, no person of intellect will doubt what this Qur'an is saying. But who is going to benefit from this Qur'an? هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. But it's going to be a source of guidance only for those people of taqwa. The only people who will actually benefit from the Qur'an are those people of taqwa. Now, the ending of Surah al-Fatihah was what? اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. I asked for guidance. Right away as I enter into Surah al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows me where to find that guidance. You were looking for guidance. You were looking for the people of guidance. Here they are. Right? First of all, that this is guidance. The Qur'an is the guidance you're looking for. You sought guidance. Come to the Qur'an. Don't neglect the Qur'an. Understand the Qur'an. Right? And, unfortunately nowadays, so much is put into memorizing the Qur'an and reciting the Qur'an. But when it comes to understanding the Qur'an, and of course properly, that's another issue as well. Unfortunately, not enough effort goes into that. So understand the Qur'an, and that's where you'll find the guidance. And on top of that, for who? Guidance for who? لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. So the people we're looking for to get the guidance from, first of all, they're going to be with the Qur'an. The Qur'an is what they're going to be speaking from. And on top of that, they're going to have taqwa as well. It's not just a random person without taqwa opening the Qur'an and saying whatever they want to. No, it's a person of taqwa. Right? Taqwa in their knowledge, in that they don't speak without knowledge. Taqwa in their obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, other than that, in that they're not committing major sins. Right? These are the people who we're going to look for to get the guidance from the Qur'an. And all these meanings layered into just one verse. Right? ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. What is taqwa? Taqwa is to protect ourselves from Allah's punishment. Ittaqa yattaqi. This verse refers to you put up a shield, right? Or you protect yourself from something. And taqwa refers to protecting ourselves from Allah's punishment. How? By obeying Him. The Qur'an in its muhkam verses says, وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ. Establish prayer and give zakat. Right? Obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And whatever other verses there are on fiqh rulings, as we'll get to, Surah al-Baqarah's emphasis on fiqh rulings is so important, the way it's structured. There is such an intelligent structure to Surah al-Baqarah. In fact, this is a surah that's been attacked by Orientalists because they say, it has no structure. No, in fact, it does. And it has a very powerful structure that emphasizes how important it is to follow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rulings and commands specifically. Right? And that's what taqwa is. Taqwa, and unfortunately, as Muslims nowadays especially, we live in a time where, everyone's looking for something new and novel, right? The new, fresh trend to follow that's going to trend on social media, make me feel good. Finally, I'm already bored of the trends from last week or yesterday or even, right? I want to look for something new. But the solutions have always been there. For everything in life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has preserved everything in the Qur'an, the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Islamic tradition, everything's already there. The scholarly tradition, everything's there already. There's nothing new. Like this, the solutions to our problems as individuals, the solutions to our problems as an ummah, we're looking for guidance, it's all there already. Taqwa, it's as easy as that. You just have to not disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's it. And then once you don't disobey Allah, when you obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu in tattaqullaha yaj'al lakum furqana. O you who believe, if you have taqwa of Allah, He will make for you a furqan, a differentiation between good and evil. The good will become apparent to you, the evil will become apparent to you. And then the Qur'an, the meanings of the Qur'an will begin to open up to you as well. That it becomes guidance for those of taqwa. So if you're asking for guidance, you need to make sure you're ready to receive it with taqwa as well. Right? And the first step of taqwa is to accept Islam and to accept the message of the Qur'an. That when I hear the Qur'an and when I understand it, I don't turn away from it. I don't argue with it. I don't fight with it. That's the baseline level of taqwa. Because if somebody doesn't do that, then either refuse to believe or they become munafiq, may Allah protect us, in that they claim to believe it, but they don't actually. In their hearts, they dislike it. They only believe outside just to fit in with family or friends or community, for example. Right? This is nifaq. So the essence of guidance is within the Qur'an, and anyone with an intellect can understand the Qur'an, but only those who are the people of taqwa will benefit from the guidance of the Qur'an. And that's something that's very basic to achieve. Pray our salawat, avoid major sins. We all know what they are. Don't harm others. This is not something that requires a verse of the Qur'an even to understand that we shouldn't be harming others, right? There's very basic verses in the Qur'an, the stories of the prophets, the Sirat of the Prophet ﷺ, very basic things we understand, right? The akhlaq, one of the most basic fundamentals of akhlaq is don't harm other people. So all this is layered just within these first two verses of the Qur'an. Now, like I said, these are actually 4 sentences. The first one is Allif Lam Mim. I don't want to get into the exact grammatical structure, but this is a noun. Okay, this is considered by the grammarians as a noun, Allif Lam Mim. Then, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابِ. ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابِ, this is also a sentence. لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ, this is a separate sentence describing the book. It's a sentence that as collectively is an adjective for the book. هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ, this is also another last sentence that what's it called? That this is meant to describe also the book with another characteristic, with another attribute. Now, each of these parts of the verse have their own eloquence, their very own specific structure for a very specific purpose. I talked about one of them. In the first one, Alif Lam Mim, we already talked about this. There's rumuz, we say in Arabic. There is like symbolism. The meaning is symbolic. It's not explicit. And you have to sort of, reflect over it, think about it. What could the meaning possibly be? And maybe it's even that we can never find out what the meaning is, and it's meant to put us on edge and realize that I'm nothing compared to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I can never fully understand this book. I can spend the rest of my life searching for the truth in it. That was the first one. ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. The word ذَلِك that was used there to sort of emphasize the status of the Qur'an, or to show how it's, where it's from, for example, that is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? That word specifically used there, ذَلِكَ, instead of هذا الكتاب. Instead of saying هذا الكتاب لا ريب فيه, ذَلِكَ الكتاب لا ريب فيه. لا ريب فيه, I already explained this one. The word ريب here is put after the la with the fatha on top of it, and this is one of the strongest forms of negation in the Arabic language, if not the strongest. There's one more which you put la and then this word with the fatha after it, and then illa with an exception as well after it. But whatever. And then the last one, هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ as well. Its feature is that the word huda is an indefinite without an al, right? And when you do that in Arabic, it first of all emphasizes the meaning of the word. It makes it seem great. It's guidance, for not the guidance, but it is guidance itself, as if, right, for the muttaqeen. And also it becomes generalized. If I said it's the guidance, no, it's not just a specific guidance, it is guidance in all forms for the muttaqeen. So look at just this first verse. It's 4 sentences, grammatically speaking, first of all. Second, each one is worded in such a specific way. And then on top of that, the beginning of Surah al-Baqarah connects to the previous surah. So we see features within individual words in the Qur'an and how they're structured. We see features within the ayah itself, sentences playing on each other. And then we see relationships between surahs, right? Connecting the 2 surahs together. How can this Qur'an come from a man who had no experience with literature or poetry whatsoever? Right? An illiterate, an unlettered prophet, someone who has no education, someone who grew up as, you know, in the middle of the desert, right? If you ever been to the desert, you understand, and you've seen like old homes there in the middle of nowhere. This is a book that came from there, right? This level of intelligent usage of language in the Quran, there is no possible way it could have come from that person in the middle of nowhere in a trading town, right? Where people were worshiping idols and just doing whatever culture, you know, made them do. Whatever, you know, people were doing, they just copied that. And yet we see this masterpiece in the Arabic language to the point where the Arabs themselves were unable to replicate it. So we have poetry, examples of poetry criticizing the Prophet ﷺ. They tried their best to attack Islam using words. We have records also of the deals they tried to make with the Prophet ﷺ, the things, the foul things they said to him as well. There is no record whatsoever. And we have the poetry still, but we don't have any record whatsoever. You know, something would have survived in history. There is many enemies in Islam, or in many enemies of Islam in early Islamic history. If you know your Islamic history, right away in the time of Uthman radiallahu anhu, Ali radiallahu anhu, the major Sahaba are still alive. So much stuff happens. Easily some person there, and there were people from the Quraysh who still had a grudge against the Muslims, even though they were Muslims by name. There are some people who still had this grudge against the Muslims or other parties, right? Other religions, like the Jews, for example, or the sort of the apostates who were there. Somebody could have easily leaked something out, or at least made up something. It didn't exist though. Right? So right away in the beginning of the Qur'an, and these features continue throughout the Qur'an. We're not always going to bring them up because otherwise, you know, we're going to be discussing this forever. But, you know, repeatedly these features keep coming up in the Qur'an over and over and over again. Next week we'll continue, inshallah, and we'll discuss who exactly are the muttaqeen. Right, and a further description of them as given because this is the first time in the Quran we encounter the word taqwa, and we encounter the word muttaqeen. So the first time we're going to encounter a description of the believers themselves. So we will talk about this inshallah next week when we continue.